Imagine a lovely sunny day in April 2010. Picture a small-ish gathering of a few family members celebrating a 14th birthday, and to the side a few presents neatly wrapped, ready to be opened. One of those presents happened to be a PlayStation 3, paired with a shiny copy of Burnout Paradise. Once opened, the excitement was uncontainable for the whole party involved. Probably. The fresh gaming device would be played and enjoyed instantly, and for many years after. Okay, I admit, this is my story. Finally, I thought upon tearing open the box, as I was quite late to the PS3 party at that point. All I could envision was the expanding road of new experiences ahead of me. I'd been scanning rows of games and shops and watching countless videos on YouTube, so from that moment the PS3 became my main form of entertainment, replacing the Wii, which was previously in the top spot. Don't worry, Wii, I still love you. I acquired a PS4 in 2017, but my experience of the PS3 is irreplaceable. It was with me throughout my high school and college days, and it brought me an extreme amount of joy. I experienced Uncharted after being obsessed with videos of the series online. I remember being blown away by the graphics of Final Fantasy XIII, the creativity of Little Big Planet, and the humour of Saints Row III. I adored exhilarating racing games like Dirt 2, and I got more into shooters like Borderlands. The range of what I was playing expanded dramatically. And the fact achievements were introduced here too, suddenly there was this added boost of dopamine from successfully doing things like killing someone with a fish in Sleeping Dogs. In summary, I credit the PlayStation 3 for why I love gaming as much as I do. And looking back, it really did have so much to offer. But stylistically, it was quite interesting. Are there any specific games you think of when I say PS3? Maybe it's something well known, or perhaps it's something a bit more niche like Puppeteer or Folklore. Maybe it's one you caught glimpses of every time you ventured outside, like I would always stumble upon Wet and Brink during family shopping trips. My point is, there is such a vast library of PS3 titles, and no matter how many you play, there are still others waiting to be found. I adore how video games looked and felt in the 2000s and 2010s. There began this weird middle ground between realistic and stylized graphics. Achieving realism was closer than ever, but no matter what, graphics were still going to look stylized in some way. Some ended up looking gloomy and grey, but others should still be regarded as artistic marvels and visual splendours, games that stand the test of time. But this video isn't about the best looking graphics or which game pushed the console to its limits, it's more about the range the PS3 offered. There are countless games I will happily point to and exclaim, yes, this is cool, I love this, more people should experience this. Dare I say, each era and console has its own type of beauty. There was a huge jump between the beginning of the PS3's life cycle in 2006 to its end in 2017, even though games had been fizzing out since the release of the PS4 in 2013. But no matter a game's release date, it can still be appreciated for its design, narrative, music, or style. And with the rise of cinematic gaming at the time, games became more emotional, intense, and powerful. Think of the dramatic nature of Heavy Rain, the facial animations of LA Noire, or the scale of Skyrim. I watched countless making-of videos as research, and during my watching spree, I asked myself, is there a pattern here? I came away with a few key words: believability, cinematic, and fun. Of course, realism had been aimed at before, but I personally think this era really raised the bar. Take this video for Max Payne 3. You hear lines such as,
a uniquely cinematic action game,
and
resulting in an immersive experience that keeps the player locked in Max's dark and twisted story.
And
the game transitions from gameplay to cutscenes using a range of cinematic editing techniques.
And
each environment in Max Payne 3 is highly detailed and based on real-world research, while being interactive
and
explode, adding to the sense of chaos.
Yeah, I think that summarizes how excited the gaming industry was for this direction. It came with this importance on making characters and environments believable and grounded, but also at the core, a focus on the pure fun a game should bring to its players. Not that there was a perfect formula, however. The hardware leap from previous generations meant the overall approach to development expanded and brought unprecedented challenges. With great power comes great responsibility. The PS3's cell processor was groundbreaking, and it meant no more compromises in one area like audio for another. The PS3 has lifted the restrictions, a quote from a magazine says. The new gen brought a whole new concept of lighting and shaders, and the increased amount of polygons equaled insane amounts of detail. Animations improved, effective music and audio became even more essential, and technical showcases of the console blew people's minds. It certainly blew my mind blowing up cars and Burnout. Of course, the PS3 is 7th gen alongside the Xbox 360, with many releases on multiple platforms. I personally don't know how the Xbox 360 compared exactly. I didn't play the Xbox at all growing up. But I think the Xbox 360 and PS3 had their strengths in different areas. I actually did find this table inside a magazine comparing early versions of each 7th gen console. The Wii looks lonely there, with only one tick. Look at the PS3 all smug having all those ticked checkboxes. That's all well and good, but it seems it was very difficult to develop for, and naturally not everyone had the time or money for it, leading to a decent amount of cancellations. But what else can we do but simply be grateful for all the titles that did pull through and left their mark? Starting off with Uncharted Drake's Fortune from 2007. What I took away from the making of video is that video games take a lot of work to make. Compared to Crash Bandicoot and Jak and Daxter before it, it's hard not to notice that Naughty Dog decided to try something a bit less cartoony. Motion capture made it possible to reach new heights of detail and animation, including lots of little subtleties, which continued to improve over the whole Uncharted series through to when Naughty Dog released a new IP, The Last of Us. The new generation also brought complex rendering techniques, which added a lot more life to games, more fluidity and weight, responsiveness, higher contrast of lights and darks, but they mention Uncharted Drake's Fortune was only utilising 30% of the PS3's power. I can believe it, because the sequel, Uncharted 2 Among Thieves, was clearly a huge improvement. The first Uncharted laid necessary foundations, and with the new engine, the Havoc engine, they took what they achieved initially and expanded upon it. I think it's a great example of taking a game and then actually improving it, building upon it. It had increased dynamic explosions and gunfire, a redone face rig, a stronger importance on active cinematic experience, a multiplayer mode, PSN having free online access at the time, may I add, and overall, simply more excitement. They actually tried to make something so the player wouldn't want to put the controller down. I think the reason why the Uncharted series became such a big hit is because they truly wanted it to be an experience, and a believable, grounded experience at that, where you weren't just playing, but you were feeling it, connected to it. Due to the unique theatrical angle for the mocap stages, and the fact they kept in situational humour and improvisations is how they nailed, in my opinion, a fantastic character-driven story. Even watching the crew and cast talk behind the scenes is fun. And in addition, they make good points about the characters not being perfect people. Far from it. Drake stumbles a lot, there are always stakes and consequences. You're not this big, tanky and vulnerable hero or machine, you're human. Relatable human characters became the standard. What was also exciting at the time was how the first 3 Uncharted games were PS3 exclusives. I remember how big of a deal exclusives were. Of course, it was a bit frustrating if you wanted to play a cool exclusive title but didn't own the console. But if you did, it felt special. Gran Turismo 5, Metal Gear Solid 4, Infamous, Little Big Planet, the MotorStorm games, the Ratchet & Clank games, Folklore, Africa Lair, a handful of pure PS3 exclusives still to this day. And we can't forget Heavenly Sword from the British devs Ninja Theory, who were also behind Hellblade and Enslaved Odyssey to the West. They really hype up Heavenly Sword in the making of. They prided in the fact that they had a female lead character and that they had Andy Serkis of Gollum fame as a writer and dramatic director. He also plays King Bohan, which resulted in, let's just say, some funny moments.
I have something of yours, and you have something of mine.
Apparently, Ninja Theory pioneered performance capture for games, so it's no wonder they thought themselves quite a big deal. They used descriptive words like film-like, blockbuster-like, cinematic. And what we can gather from this is that they had a clear direction, despite the fact they actually started development before knowing what the next-gen console was going to be. In short, they wanted to try and make one of the most beautiful games ever created.
Our goal was to try and make one of the most beautiful games ever created.
Which was quite ambitious, but you can tell the company has always followed the same ethos because I think Hellblade demonstrates this as well. You know what? I applaud them. Staying on PS3 exclusives, let me mention Little Big Planet. I have such fond memories of playing this, it scratched my brain in the exact right way. It's creative, imaginative, the tagline play, create, share shows that enough, and you know, the game is childhood to many people. I can't quite put my finger on the feeling I get when I recall my memories of this. It's nostalgic, of course, but it was fun, memorable, cozy, and addictively challenging at times. I'm just glad Little Big Planet was successful. It proved the potential of stylized, light-hearted creative games and showed that they still had an audience and place, especially within an industry that had suddenly become fueled by realism. Slightly less well known but similarly creative and fun is Mod Nation Racers, a kart racer I grew up enjoying a lot. With there being a PSP version alongside the PS3, it showcases a unique single-player and multiplayer kart racing experience. In the devs' words, kart racing evolved. Oh wait, Little Big Planet had a kart racer as well, didn't it? Good times. Mod Nation Racers is humorous, fueled by a story that encourages creativity against corporate ideals. It makes me realise I really need to bring fun back into my life. And lo and behold, the studio behind Mod Nation Racers was also behind Sleeping Dogs. Who knew? Ah, Sleeping Dogs. My mind instantly recalls the rain, how it falls when you're walking or driving around the city and everyone getting their umbrellas out. For the fighting, the devs felt it crucial to work with an expert mixed martial artist for reference, in this case George St. Pierre. They worked to make the combat as believable and authentic and fluid as possible. And I think it paid off. I love Sleeping Dogs. I've played it 2 or 3 times by now and it still surprises me that Emma Stone does a voice in it. Sleeping Dogs wasn't an exclusive though, and was also released on Windows and Xbox 360. And even though the PS3 is the driving force behind this video, I won't restrict it to PS3 exclusives because a lot of great games from the era were on multiple platforms. For example, Elder Scrolls Oblivion, Dragon Age Origins, and BioShock were ported to the PS3 after their initial releases. BioShock is an example of a game where the developers felt the weight of the new generation and how much the capabilities of new toolsets were going to aid them compared to earlier years. BioShock succeeded because once again, it brought something new to the industry, in this case, to the shooter genre. And it still looks stunning. It's conceptually beautiful. A whole city under the ocean is such a cool idea, and they made it work despite hardships and challenges. They utilised a bunch of storytelling mediums such as audio diaries, advertisements in the environment, etc., and it added a layer to the universe where the player could really believe in the story. Similar to Uncharted, the people are flawed and the world itself is flawed. Moreover, the choices were more complex, not just black and white, which brings me to Dragon Age Origins. It really feels like there are limitless choices to make. The scope is truly impressive. You can praise Dragon Age Origins in many areas, but it jointly succeeded in bringing something different to a genre, in this case fantasy. To stand out, to be unique and fresh and believable, was the new standard. So many windows that opened for developers to create outside of the box, and consequently alter the direction of genres. Dragon Age Origins has so much depth and so many layers. I can attest to that because it's the game I've put the most hours into in my life. There's visual and architectural storytelling. It's a world where you can imagine people living and working and surviving. Like I said, keyword, believability. From BioWare, we also have Mass Effect, where they wanted to create a believable and fresh space trilogy combining adventure, action, and story. All media is inherently going to have flaws, but what Dragon Age and Mass Effect managed to do was immerse you in their worlds. Whether it was on the ground or in space, they have a deep atmosphere that sticks with you. Video games provide you with unique, crafted worlds to explore and get lost in, and the more immersed you feel, the better. The very early 2000s strikes me as the experimentation era, with such a huge range of styles which I admire greatly. But the next gen brought a level of seriousness. I think developers wanted to show how meaningful gaming could be. They wanted it to compare to movies and for it to be respected. No, they really wanted it to compare to movies. The amount of times I've heard film, blockbuster and cinematic is crazy. During the making of Dead Space, the team talks very openly about loving their game, which in turn makes me happy. At this point, games started to become longer, which meant you couldn't just reuse elements over and over if you wanted the experience to be effective, especially when it came to scares, punchlines, or gags. It's immersive, with visceral imagery, the sound and music amps up the whole experience, and I admire the countless iterations they went through to nail the timings for scares. The devs wanted to make sure you felt like you were stuck in the world with these horrific creatures. Creatures you recognise to be evolved from humans, so there's a bit of relatability there between you and what you're shooting. There's plenty of details in the environment to help you grasp the story. Once again, we have a relatable human character, and it's easy to feel vulnerable. There's unique weapons too, one being an iconic, satisfying gun with horizontal and vertical firing modes. You can slice the limbs off enemies with precision, if you're not panicking, of course. Not saying I panicked. Of course I didn't. I'm as calm as a cucumber. It's a smart weapon, a design choice they made because doing something finer under stress is scary, hence why you see characters often scramble to put keys in locks when running away from something. It increases tension. Also, may I mention the immersion because of the lack of HUD. Mirror's Edge and Journey are other examples, but what makes Dead Space smart is how the health is shown on the back of the suit. I always liked that. Some games allow you to turn off the HUD manually if you want to breathe and be immersed for a moment or two. Final Fantasy XIII is one of them. You can press a button and poof, minimap be gone. Final Fantasy XIII certainly has a divided audience, but man, I really like this game. I admit it was my first Final Fantasy and I would stay up into the early hours of the morning as a teen to play it, so there is that layer of nostalgia there. But man, those visuals, absolutely incredible. I think everyone can at least agree it deserves the praise it got for its presentation. The music is amazing too, and the sound, joint with running around in these environments, is breathtaking. The blue hues of ice surrounding you in Lake Brescia, the vivid colours in Nautilus, the futuristic style of Eden. There's lush greens, vast fields, wide open skies, and satisfying footstep sounds as you run. Whenever I am reminded this was released in 2009, it absolutely blows my mind. It's beautiful. The sequels look just as great, but yeah, I don't care or hype this game up for as long as I live. Plus we got Troy Baker as Snow over here.
And the hero saves the day! Incredible!
Japanese studio Square Enix are responsible for publishing a lot of stuff, including titles like Murdered Soul Suspect, Quantum Conundrum, Nier, and Mindjack. Some Japanese studios provided us with some over-the-top experimental experiences which are very much worth mentioning. Famously, that includes the Yakuza series, but also Tokyo Jungle and Catherine, Atlus's first jump into HD, their experiment before making another Persona title. It's unique, chaotic, bizarre, and the bright pink cover stands out beautifully. Lollipop Chainsaw is a favourite Japanese game of mine by Grasshopper Manufacture, written by James Gunn, also featuring Tara Strong. It comes as no surprise, their goal was to never hold back and to make everything as extreme as possible. It was an ambitious addition to the gaming world. This level of colour certainly contrasted with the mainstream. It's a cheesy, funny, wacky zombie killing game, and I recommend the original version so you can hear all the licensed music. Also by Grasshopper we have Shadows of the Damned, produced by Shinji Mikami, formerly of Capcom and director of games like God Hand, Vanquish, and Resident Evil. Shadows of the Damned is dark and twisted but goes all out. It's certainly an entertaining journey. Every creative field needs variation, and I think companies like Grasshopper Manufacture are needed to go against the status quo, as it were. Their games involve exaggerated gameplay and ridiculous designs, but they stand out, and that's brave. We shouldn't brush them off as silly, they should be respected. Take Bayonetta as well. It sticks in my mind for being flamboyant and action-packed. They were less relying on photorealistic visuals, but working with a hybrid of fantasy and real. What I find funny is that for some reason the higher-ups or publishers didn't want Bayonetta wearing glasses, but director Hideki Kamiya refused to compromise, and in the end they agreed, and then there were glasses added all over the place. Watching the making of, they state they were taking action to a new level. And they certainly did. And I would like to point out the joy I felt when seeing that a woman conceptualised and designed the characters, Mari Shimazaki. It's easy to notice how male-dominated the industry is, I can't deny, especially through the making of videos. You can also sense how the targeted demographic was very much male, which makes me appreciate it even more when I see women in the industry. For example, I very much respect Amy Hennig for her work as a game director and writer during her time at Naughty Dog. Just because so much success was achieved doesn't mean the PS3 didn't have its weird trends. You've potentially been waiting for it, the P/piss filter fiasco, i.e. the yellowy brown filter some games had. Was it good? That's debatable, especially looking back on it now. Grey, sepia, dull, muddy, a bit ugly, gritty, earthy, but I don't know, I like it. In its defense, if it's an apocalyptic setting like in Fallout 3, then the colours fit the atmosphere. Fallout 3 wouldn't have the same feeling if it was all highly saturated and bright and colourful, right? Resident Evil 5 would also change tonally if it was sharp and bright and colourful. Could the colour be improved? Yes, but I don't think they were too far off. There was intent behind it, at least. A lot of these games are supposed to be gritty. Whether you like the atmosphere or not, well, that's up to you. But to me, not everything needs to pop with sharp, clean, happy colours. Some games require something more sickly and dirty to fit the mood. In essence, I prefer to see a range of visual tones. Think of GTA 4 or Metal Gear Solid 4. Both are exceedingly well loved and highly acclaimed titles. You just let the tone wash over you, you don't focus on it. It draws you in like a movie would. I genuinely think it added to those games' success. Resistance Fall of Man is another example, a very early PS3 game releasing in 2006 alongside the console. It stated that the colours got to be dirty and therefore make the player feel uncomfortable. Gritty, realistic, immersive, cinematic. Again, that's what they were aiming for, not just brown for brown's sake. The industry wasn't completely overrun by it. Let's take something like Bulletstorm, which I think looks amazing. By the way, looking up at the sky in this game is a treat. Or Enslaved Odyssey to the West. The developers were completely aware of the trends, even saying we don't like monochromatic games, which is completely fair. They wanted to put a twist on the popular apocalyptic trope and make something essentially less depressing. On one end we had dark and gritty, but on the other we had something called Bloom. Bloom. It's this bright, glowy effect, essentially, and it was just one of those things some devs were excited to experiment with, it seems, but they dialed up the settings a bit too high in some cases. I've been playing Mirror's Edge, for example, and apart from almost pulling my hair out near the end, I praise its uniqueness, the music, the cutscene style, and the exhilarating feeling you get when running and jumping over buildings. I didn't fall, I swear. But it's funny to me that certain angles will equal pure whiter than white areas of the screen and you really can't see anything, which isn't great when you're trying to run and jump a million miles above ground. The game is fun though. I recommend. I think Bloom could equal this kind of nice, dreamy watercolour feel, but then again it could also give you a headache, like in Syndicate. The beauty of the PS3 also comes from indie devs, smaller companies, overlooked games, and experimental hidden gems. Braid, released in 2008, became a surprise hit and was a keystone to the growth of indie development. After Braid, Microsoft, Sony and Valve became more interested in revamping their stores to host more experimental and independent games. Limbo, Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, Journey, Flower, Castle Crashes, Fez, Echochrome, The Unfinished Swan, just to name a few that appeared on the PS3. But I simply couldn't name them all. It would take too long. To end though, I will mention Alice Madness Returns, with its dark fairy tale look and feel. From the music and environments to the weapons and dresses, it all feels so meticulously designed, and each and every corner fits the atmosphere to a T. Also, it had some really awesome cinematic trailers. I love these to death. During this interview with American McGee, he exclaims he wanted to give gamers an entirely new experience / something players had never seen before, which of course is difficult at the end of the day because it's risky to try and sell outside of genre norms, unfortunately. All these unique games really had to create space for themselves at the time. I respect it, and seeing devs think outside of the box and take risks is something I really value. The shift from 6th to 7th gen must have been exciting, yet daunting. This made me look at the era in a new light from new perspectives. You know, how much time these games took to make, what the development cycle looked like, the passion, and so many people just striving for bigger and better things. Of course, the gaming industry was and still isn't perfect. And the PS3's library wasn't perfect. There were also a bunch of low-rated titles and a myriad of strange licensed games, but I love that the console has a whole host of flaws and charms. Please let me know if you have any favourites on the PS3, or if you were more of an Xbox 360 person, or a PC person, or maybe not a gamer at all. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you to my supporters over on Patreon. You're the best. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and take care. Bye bye.